Hi, it's Larry Call from Revenue Secrets. I'm here with Jeff Bajorek. Jeff is a podcast host as well as a coach and consultant. And he's got this concept that really intrigued me, which is why I invited him to join. I've been following Jeff for a number of years and reading his content and listening to his podcast as well. What really struck me was just this concept around rethink the way you sell. I couldn't agree more that people need to rethink the way that they sell. And Jeff works with professional sales organizations. Now, of course, our audience are independent business owners, but the concepts completely apply to someone who is not a professional in sales and runs their own business. So let's start with your story, Jeff. How did you used to sell? How did you rethink it? And how do you do it now?
That's a great question, Larry. And I think, you know, I was reluctantly encouraged to become a salesperson, right? That someone suggested that that I get into sales, and I said, I don't think that's me. And I'll spare you the story of what actually transpired to get me into a professional sales role. But I think the concept there is that people identify salespeople or the act of selling as this thing that has to be done a certain way. Therefore, if they don't like the way that it needs to be done, then a sales career just isn't for them. And that's certainly the way that I thought. But therein lies the problem. Selling is not something you do to someone. It is not this pre-prescribed set of actions or words or statements that you make to then accomplish a certain end, right? Selling is the way you interact with people. One of my favorite definitions for selling, I heard Brian Tracy said it a long time ago in a book called The Psychology of Selling. He said, a sale is a transfer of enthusiasm from one party to another.
Wow.
When you back up and you think about that, it's like, wow, okay, I remember where I was in my car. I was glad I was sitting down when I was in my car when I heard that, because it would have knocked me off of my feet. When you open up your definition for what selling is, it becomes this completely different entity that gives you the ability to accomplish what you want to accomplish the way you want to accomplish it. So when I understood that I didn't have to use these scripts or use these words or do these things or spend a bunch of money to hopefully make some money in order to sell, in order to be effective, when I thought about how I interact with other human beings, when I thought about how many sales are made every day that don't involve money, but we just don't call them sales, right? Anytime you ask someone to do something for you, not even for you, anytime you ask someone to do something that they wouldn't have done if it weren't for you asking, you made a sales call. When they do it, you made a sale. And if they did it for you and you made a sale, that kind of makes them your customer. So now I've got this kind of a weird, take on selling, to where I think if we treated everybody like our customer, then we'd all get along better. We'd all listen better. We'd all get a lot more done. We'd all have a little more empathy. We'd be more collaborative. And I think it'd be a better experience. But that's what I mean when it comes to rethink the way you sell. Larry, I can't sell like you. You can't sell like me. So why are we all trying to do it the same way? You and I have been doing this long enough to know that we can be effective in our own way, and that we've developed our own processes and styles, right? But most salespeople, probably 80% of salespeople, are out there looking for a paint by numbers picture to just tell me what to say and when to say it, and I'll be good with this. And people want to be successful. That's a good thing, but trying to contrive your way into that success is where people go wrong. So think about it. What am I trying to accomplish here? What's the best way for me to accomplish it? And then let's try that. That's where I come from.
So I have a shelf of books right over here. Not the ones behind me, but
okay.
Over here I got a lot of books in this room. So I'm looking over at a shelf of business books. I got a couple $100 worth of books on systems.
Mm-hmm.
And I won't go through the titles. We all know them. We're all reading the same kind of books. Are you taking on a multi-billion-dollar industry here and what you just said?
No. What I'm trying to do is help people understand there are reasons those systems work. Let's distill what the commonalities are among systems and why systems work. Let's understand the principles that go into a successful process. And then let's figure out how we can adapt those principles to suit our needs. I like to say that if you know how to sell, you can sell anything. But just because you sold millions of dollars of this one product doesn't mean you know how to sell. It means you've been successful selling this one product. And I don't want to get tied up in the semantics of that, but when you know what it takes to move somebody, when you know what it takes to understand what their motives are, to help them to help them appreciate their better situation based on what you're asking them to do, and by the time you get them through to showing them a better way, showing them you can help them accomplish something that they want to accomplish, and then providing them the solution, which is the means for them to do that. When you know what it takes to do that, you fill in the blanks with the products, right? But that's an understanding of processes and systems and people. It's not first you make 100 calls and then based on 100 calls, hopefully you guessed right on 10 of them. And then based on a couple of generic bullet points, we know that one or two of them is going to be interested enough to give you a try. So let's just go do the math, right? That takes all the spirit out of selling. And when you're approaching sales as something that is soulless in that regard, where there's just no emotion in it and it's just a running, you're just going through the motions. That's what's boring about it. That's what people hate about it. I've never had more fun selling in my entire life. And now I can't imagine not having a sales role because of how engaging it is and how I get to interact with other people, because people fascinate me. So when you pull the specifics out and look at just the structure of the systems, and you look at the commonalities among those systems, well, now we have something to learn. Now we have something to explore, and now we have something to have fun with.
What a lot of independent consultants, coaches, and entrepreneurs who are listening to this program don't expect when they start their business is that they just entered a career in sales.
Right.
So there's a problem. There's a contradiction and a barrier for them, right there. So what does that barrier typically look like? And given the rethink how you sell context that you just described, what can they do to get through that barrier and actually enjoy that part of their career, which has to become the focus of their business, as opposed to feeling like there's a drudgery in the sales part of what they have to be doing?
I get people back to basics, right? If hopefully that's clear by now. I look at systems and principles and things like that and try to distill the basics. And when I start working with, whether it's a professional selling organization who know what they're doing and know what their job is, or it's a business owner who's really like, it just hit them that they're responsible for revenue, right? That their good idea was enough, but it's not a strict meritocracy out there. If you build it, doesn't mean that they're going to come, right? You've got to find a way to put your ideas in front of people and let them know how you can help. And so I start with an exercise that I call it, what is your why, right? So why do you believe in the company you started? Why do you believe the products and services that you sell? Why do you believe in yourself? Why do you believe that your customer is better off for having done business with you? That's vital. And then, the next one's kind of a trick question. I'll get into that later, is why do your best customers buy from you, right? What is the reason that they buy from you? And most people assume the answer to that, and it's the wrong assumption. But once we get through that, and I have people answer those questions, we talk about those answers, you really get a feeling for what their purpose is and where their passion comes from. And you have to go back to that. You have to rely on that, because it's going to be hard. It's certainly there are going to be some unexpected things that come up that throw you off your game a little bit. You have to have that why, that purpose to ground you so that you remember that you keep moving forward. So that's step one. The second thing that I move into is, it comes out of my book, The 5 Forgotten Fundamentals of Prospecting. When we get too far, or when we focus too hard on the minutia of what we think selling is, we forget the big stuff. Like number one, forgotten fundamental number one is know what you bring to the table. What differentiates you? Well, why did you start this business? Why are you different than the other competitors in the space? And what about you? And what about your solution is unique that you bring to the table? So, know what you bring to the table. Number two is know who you should be talking to. Who's your target market? Who is going to respond the best to that differentiator that you have. If you cannot differentiate, you cannot sell. Who are those differentiations going to matter to? And most people, when they start a business, they know those two things. Right? There was the reason that they got into the business to begin with, or the reason that they, separated from their professional firm or whatever. They had a great idea that they knew there was a place in the market for it. And they knew that there were some people who were going to respond or resonate with that idea. So you're already 2/5 of the way there, right? And so you remind them what their purpose is and why they're moving forward. You remind them that they've got a bunch of momentum, and then you teach them the fundamentals, or the not the fundamentals, but the kind of the root movers in the sales process, and that is creating tension and demonstrating expertise. And tension is not necessarily discomfort, right? There's a lot of there are a lot of sales systems out there that talk about finding pain and uncovering pain points and those things. And there are certainly a lot of painful issues that good solutions will solve for. But there are a lot of people who buy stuff because they want to feel good too, not because they are in a bad place and they want to feel better. Nobody buys a Bentley automobile because they're in pain, right? That there's another driving force for that. So when you identify what creating tension is, it's really identifying the difference between where the prospect is right now and where they could be if they employed your solution. And is there a big enough difference there to get them to want to act, to get them to want to move? Then on the back end of that, you have to demonstrate enough expertise to let them believe that you are the one that can help them get there, right? So where are you now? Where do you want to go? Is there enough stimulus there? And do you trust me to know that, or do you trust me to believe that, do you believe in me enough that I am the one to help you, get to where you need to go? And that is really, those are the underlying emotions behind the sales process. And then the fifth fundamental is keep your swagger. Because as I alluded to before, it's hard. You have to remind yourself of your purpose. You have to remind yourself of what you're trying to accomplish and how many people are going to be better off for having you help them. And some days it's going to be great. And some days you're going to feel like you're down for the count. And that swagger that ties back into the purpose. So that's what I work with people on. And when you can frame things in that way, they start to see things in their own way. Creating tension, we talk about asking good questions. You start conversations by asking questions. You end conversations by making statements, right? And what is the expertise that you brought to this? Why did you create this product? Why did you create this framework, this idea? Well, because you knew enough that this was going to be the differentiator, right? So I think so many professional service people have everything and more that it takes to be successful in growing their business. They just need the framework. They just need the lens to look at what they're doing the right way so that they can actually put it to good use.
I read your book. It's excellent. I recommend it to everybody on this call to take a look at it. There's a link up on the screen. Just click through that link and you can check out the book. So this concept of a simple 5-part framework makes a lot of sense to me. One of the things I spend a lot of time doing is seeking out experts, asking for advice, new ideas, building those relationships with people, and taking their courses, reading their books, hiring them to help consult with me. Now here's an interesting dynamic: is I'm supposed to be an expert in all of this stuff, right? Well, the reason I am and that I'm good at what I do is because I'm doing that all the time. I don't feel like I have all the answers. So here's the resistance that I see to what you're talking about. It's not that people don't want to do what you're suggesting and follow that sort of a framework. The challenge I often see is that there's an interest and an intention, but not a prioritization. So there's a mistaken idea in a small business owner that you're there to deliver service.
Right.
And that's just table stakes. That's not why you're there. You're there to bring a consistent stream of revenue at whatever level that needs to be at, whether it's just you or you want to build a company into that organization. So I want to say this right now. So in your experience, what does it take to get started with you, to work through this sort of a framework? so people understand what they're going to have to get, into if they decide it really is important to move beyond intention to actually doing what you're suggesting.
I think you need to be curious, right? I think you need to, like you said, well, I'm the expert. I don't need to look for these other resources. I mean, the first time I started a business was a long time ago. My first professional selling job, I was a 1099. So I had to form an LLC and everything. And they say, get a lawyer, get an accountant, get some people on your team who know what they need. And I'm like, nah, I don't need that. I'm just going to be accepting a check and whatever. And then you get to that first tax year and you're like,
Oh my God.
I really should have hired a CPA, right? Or
Yeah.
you get into a situation where someone wants to enter into some sort of a partnership agreement with you, and you see this contract, and you're like, I can't read this. I really should have an attorney, shouldn't I? And so I think that the first part is not putting the cart before the horse, and remembering that you're an expert in this one thing, but there are 100 different, realms of expertise that are necessary in order to run a successful business. It's a team sport. Right. So it's not admitting weakness. You are not underprepared. You are not a failure for needing help in these regards. It's like, look, it's really important to do it right. If you don't have time to do it right, you don't have time to do it twice. So really consider what you're doing as you get started moving with the business. As far as taking a look at your approach and what these fundamentals are, like, get the book. You can go to my website. You can download the workbook. I give you space. I ask you some questions that you can, think through.
We'll put the link back up on the screen so people can make sure if you changed your mind, you didn't want to do it before, now you can do it.
But like there's a lot of self-directed study that goes in this. And look, if you're owning a business, there's always going to be a lot of self-directed study because the business world is constantly changing. So you may find that you need some help with your marketing or your messaging or your sales process. And that's a great place to start is, I've created an environment for people to do that work on their own. If they want to explore it a little bit further, Larry, that's where someone like you comes in really, really well. And, I'm certainly available to have some of those conversations along those lines too. I mean, there are people around you everywhere. And it is amazing how few people need the help, want the help, and want to reach out, but then don't because, oh, Larry's too busy. I don't want to bug Jeff. Yeah, it's like, well, hold on. If I can take the call, I will. If I can return the email, I will. The email doesn't need to be that long. It takes 10 seconds. Hey, Larry, I think you can help me. Is it worth exploring this? Boom, you'll get a call back. Or you won't. And if you don't, for some reason, because you are just too busy to help people, doesn't make sense when you say it out loud. You're not out more than 15 seconds and sending an email and on to the next one, right? So I guess try to lose the inhibition of asking for help because everybody needs help. And, be confident in knowing that if this is worth selling or worth starting a business for, it's worth asking for help to start that business and continue it to run. So, look, I know you help people this way. I certainly help people this way. It's worth reaching out. And I love having those kinds of conversations. So even if you're not a good fit for me as a client, I'm energized by a new set of problems to solve. And I typically have at least a couple, 3 good ideas on that first 30-minute phone call that'll get you started anyway.
So what we did with Revenue Climber Club is we're offering people a free community to join to work through some of these issues. And you don't even have to talk to me if you don't have time or you don't want to, but these different steps are available to you as you want to learn more and get more engaged with us in terms of joining one of our base camps or expedition teams or the Ascent Club as you get more experienced. And I think one of the things I find is I have to turn some people away, and it's based on characteristics. And this is what I heard you say. So what I heard you say is that if somebody isn't willing to open themselves up, be vulnerable, and get motivated, it's really not worth your time to arm wrestle somebody and try to get them into that state of mind. Somebody's got to come with you to you already ready to go and want to learn something, and then the system becomes workable.
Right. I like to say that I like to roll up my sleeves and work with people who like to roll up their sleeves and work. I'm not, I'm very proud of the work that I do, and I want to help people who are very proud of the work that they do. So proud of it, in fact, that they want to make it better. And, you've got to come in with an open mind. And look, there are some people that don't agree with the advice I give them. That's okay. It's up for that. It's up to them to disagree with it. It's not like, okay, you got to be willing to show up and do whatever I tell you. No, that's not how this works. You got to be willing to show up and be open to a different set of opinions of what might work for you. And then I can help you make the decision. Ultimately, the decision is yours to make. It's your business. You know what's right or what's wrong. It's my job to have an outside perspective, someone who understands what needs to happen, right? In terms of those fundamentals and those principles. If you don't know what your messaging is, if you don't have a good story to tell, if you don't have compelling reasons for your prospects to buy from you, I can't advise you on whether or not you're sending the right number of emails or making the right number of phone calls, because those are down the line. You've missed a box. You haven't checked this box here. You need to do that first. So those are the things that I remind people of. And if you haven't been working in sales and marketing for 15 years like I have, you're not going to know what those are. Those are your blind spots. So show up, curious, ready to learn, and ready to get to work.
So we have our club, Revenue Climber Community. I believe you have something similar where people can start to get engaged with you and your content. What are those different areas? I know you have a podcast, which I listen to, called The Why and the Buy podcast. We can put some links up on the screen for people to find these things. What else do you have available to people?
I've got a lot of things. I create a lot of content, Larry.
Yeah,
if you Google my name, you're going to find a lot of things. I'm on a lot of different podcasts. I put a lot of different messaging out there. But I've got a free community at rethinkthewayyouSell.com. It's pretty straightforward, right? And that's where, my blog goes. I've got a website at jeffbajorek.com where the blog is, but I put a lot of that content in the community. There's some engagement there among other people in the community. We have monthly networking events and things like that where, we can come together, learn from each other. I do have some premium digital offerings. I have some courses on the way in that community. I've got a premium podcast that's a subscription called Deeper Thought that you can find. And there's another premium group within that community that's available for you. But if you want to learn, and particularly if you want to learn from me, jeffbajorek.com or rethinkthewayyouSell.com. Those are the best two places. Those are the hubs where all my stuff lives. And there's a lot there. You can get lost for several hours just reading the different pieces, listening to the Why and the Buy podcast. Like I'm out there. So there's stuff that's there for free. If you want to get a little deeper and get a little more intent, there's some, I'd call them light subscriptions. They're not very expensive to subscribe to a little bit more of that content. And there are plenty of places to interact with me one-on-one.
And if people get lost in the content and they want to talk to you directly, what's the easiest way for them to contact you?
jb@jeffbajorek.com. That's my email address. Comes right to me and I respond.
Got it. Thanks again, Jeff, for joining. I think this was really helpful. It is absolutely one of the most important things for a business owner to do. It's step 4 for us in our methodology at Sales Sherpa, and you can't really skip any of the steps. So this is one of the most important for sure. Thanks again. I really appreciate your time.
Hey, thanks for having me, Larry.
Thanks for listening. If you're self-employed and tired of not having enough great clients, join our free Revenue Climber Club. Click salessherpa.co for details and to sign up for the community. Stop climbing alone and reach the summit together with us.